Doctor Fawcett's Experiment by R.Ferrers Broad. Nicholas Fawcett was not his real name. I have given him this alias for the same reason that disguises every other clue in his narrative. Read it, and you will not wonder why. I knew him but slightly, and that before the scandal, now forgotten, that led to his disgrace. Of those years, and the scandal itself, it is needless to speak here. Why did he direct his posthumous manuscript to me, almost a stranger? As I see it, because he was utterly without friends at the end, and probably his urgent desire that the manuscript should one day be published prompted him to entrust it to me. I saw him the second time after his name had been struck from the rolls, and he made me swear not to disclose the only story he gave me. It instructed me how, when he died, to gain possession of this manuscript. Now he has been dead the 5 years he stipulated as interval before its publication, and you can judge it for yourself. 5 years ago, they found him dead in his hermitage. He had not died naturally, and he was not alone. In a large copper at the back of the house was, well, it had been a man, if the term fits a deranged criminal lunatic. Investigation at last petered helplessly out into an open verdict in both cases. Neither was it able to find any connection with the peaceful death, in her bed a mile away, of an elderly woman. Natural causes, they said. They never found the doctor's assailant. They theorised vainly over his corpse. Why was the throat so hideously mutilated? They said it looked exactly as if it had been gnawed and ripped from its living owner by some large rodent. A ferret, say, or a big rat. And this is his manuscript, just as he wrote it, with the frantic deletions he made to cover his tracks, so that none may ever follow him. December 5th. So I am free. Yes, free, for that is the way I must look at it. I know that sometimes I am going to feel that the price of freedom has been heavy. I have sacrificed fame, wealth, brilliance. All these things would have been mine had I been content to go on in what they call the normal way. But one day my name will echo through the world as a pioneer. When the work is complete, it deserves the capital letter that I have given it. I regret only the stigma which I have incurred, but perhaps even that is a blessing in its way. It means that I shall be forgotten, and that my researches will never incur the limelight. Here I can work on at them with never an interruption. My needs, too, will be simply supplied. In the country one can live cheaply, and materials will be at hand. Drugs from the hedges and ditches. And when I have finished my preparations, I can start to look for subjects, and they, too, are at hand with none to refuse me. Rabbits, little wild things from the fields, owls, rats, even insects at first, perhaps, and then after. But time enough to think of other matters when they are due. This is forbidden ground on which I am going to trespass, I suppose. But who will know? Oh, what nonsense it is anyway. Ridiculous anachronisms that hamper the work of progress. One would think we were not yet out of the Dark Ages. I am rather like a modern Galileo with his telescope, except that I do not propose to be martyred. Tomorrow I shall be the country squire and walk abroad. I have scarcely any neighbours within miles, but I must make a good impression. I ought to see about a charlady to do for me, as they say. How radiantly, childishly happy I feel. December 6th. My domestic arrangements are complete, and for a few shillings a week I am able to rid myself of those unnecessary details. I even had a further stroke of luck, for it occurred to me to mention to the good woman whom I now employ that I was interested in the cult of herbal remedies. Oh, what a joke, I thought to myself. She proved a perfect mine of information as to the places where I was likely to find growing such plants as I shall require. Tomorrow I go and start searching. Here I am completely anonymous, and there is very little chance of anyone meeting me, let alone recognising the one-time famous specialist. January 4th. I do not propose to write up this diary regularly by the date, but rather according to the progress of the work. Hence a gap of 1 month, which has been occupied with the preparation of a concoction embodying the first. At this point, the manuscript has several lines cancelled, apparently to delete a formula. It is a potent drug, as is instantly appreciated. A subject for experiment provided itself in the form of a small mouse, which I succeeded in catching and injecting. It was 2 hours before the animal recovered consciousness, and then, before I could stop it, foolishly I had omitted to shut it up, it began to rush about the table, frothing at the mouth. I tried to catch it, and 2 minutes later I found myself minus the patient, and also with a retort smashed on the floor. This is very irritating, for I have only a limited stock of apparatus, and do not wish to have to buy more. Apart from the expense, it means possibly attracting attention to myself. February 10th. I am very tired tonight, after days of ceaseless experiment, but I am now certain of one thing. It is useless to attempt the production of a cell from a normal animal. I have followed this out patiently and thoroughly, and the result is always negative. Unfortunately, it has cost a good deal of life, and the severity of the winter renders replacement increasingly difficult. It's maddening to think that I may be held up at a definite stage in the work through lack of material, and I am observing economy with the stock I have managed to collect. I find I have to be very careful on account of my amiable but brainless charwoman. Some of the experiments are none too easy to conceal. She asked me yesterday, whatever was I wanting with all those rabbits? And to allay her curiosity, I was forced to waste one of them on a pie for dinner. This depleted the stock to a mere 4 animals. They would have been 6, but for my efforts to evolve a satisfactory deviation from normal. With cumulative injections, I certainly succeeded in making 2 of them insane, but it appears that this artificial or cultivated insanity is insufficient. After a few days I killed one of them, and as before treated the brain, liver and blood by distillation. But all my patience and care have not produced in the resultant colloid the faintest cellular tendency. I am rather at a loss to know what to do next. Dare I risk the total loss of the remainder of my animals by introducing the second insane rabbit into their hutch? I might, again, drug it to produce a lowering of type towards cannibalism, and later try to breed a mentally unfit litter from it. April 27th. I am really in despair, for I cannot seem to hit on the right lines. Yet there must be a method, somehow. I see my last entry was about the mad rabbit. I wasted the rest of the cold weather in various fruitless dabblings, and in keeping the brute alive, which has been a problem. Then I tried the breeding method. I got so far that I thought my brain would have given way when disaster overtook me, for I actually reached the point of the litter and had just inspected it with great satisfaction. No sooner was my back turned than I heard a scream. The buck had bitten through the doe's throat. I dragged the beast off, and of course it bit me through the hand, compelling me to go off and hastily cauterize the injury. When I returned, the litter was destroyed and partly eaten, and the father sat glaring at me with its mouth all bloody. In passion I struck at it and crushed its body under my feet. I staggered back to my room, sick with disappointment, and for the last month I have been tossing with fever, brought on by strain in the infection of the bite. My cauterization was too quick to be thorough. Today I have touched the depths, and can hardly feel thankful that I'm still alive. I almost wish that the woman, who I must admit has pulled me through and shown a surprising solicitude for my welfare, I almost wish she had let me go. I am beginning to be afraid about her. It was only with the utmost difficulty that I stopped her sending for a doctor. What a thought! In the night when she had gone, I had to force myself out of bed, temperature or not, to see that my colloids were safe. I don't know how much she has found out, or what she may have blabbed. I sit here, weak and shaky from fever, and with my wretched hand still useless, so that I cannot trust myself to handle apparatus. I wrestle with calculations, and cannot put them into effect. How strange it is that no sooner am I incapacitated than new theories flood upon me, which I cannot yet try out. It's enough to drive one mad to think that in medieval times they did succeed in producing life from dead animal matter, and that I, with all my long knowledge, am unable to emulate them. Sometimes a fierce longing comes over me, dangerous dreams that have to be restrained. In my present state of health, they might easily become an obsession that would lead me... No, I must not put it down. It must be crushed. What an end for me, to be executed for murder. And yet, after all, what foolery it is that I should have to work in this hide-and-corner fashion. My task as the highest of objects is identified in the fullest way with biological progress, even if many of the means might appear to be distasteful. Is it really to be, as it seems, that I am to fail because of the limit to my experiment imposed by the short-sighted laws of man? Fail. I can hardly bring myself to write the word. Surely there must be some road for me to travel. Let me restore this health of mine, heal my hand, and then I shall not be troubled with these morbid thoughts. June 9th. What luck! What wonderful luck! To think that until a month ago I had sunk and sunk, even to the depth of meditating self-destruction. Just a heat wave. That was what turned the scale. I had nothing left but the cultures, and was thinking of throwing them away, when I found the dog. A mangy, flea-ridden mongrel it was too. The sudden heat drove it mad within a few yards of my gate. Natural madness, the thing I had prayed for. I must have run a considerable risk in catching the little beast, but I was too excited to worry about that. Enough that I could. Here follows a long period of obliteration in the manuscript, and then, mixed with the culture from the rabbit at a carefully adjusted temperature, the heat seems to have been the factor that made for success. After a week of testing with reagents, I detected under the microscope a distinct and mobile cell structure in the midst of the gelatinous colloid upon which it appears to feed. My writing is shaky with excitement, and no wonder. I have made an amoeba, the first stage in life. If only I can find an accelerator, I may be able to assist the formation of a cell system. Surely this time I shall not be disappointed, with my dawn actually breaking on the horizon. June 17th. I hardly know how to put this down. for I am beset by a terrible temptation. In some ways, when I look at the case, it is as if nature has thrown a gift into my lap, and yet, dare I? It was yesterday that I found him, a filthy, half-starved tramp, unconscious amongst the bushes in the garden. The story was obvious: lack of food, exposure. Even if my name is no longer on the rolls, I am still a doctor, and the call of humanity made me take him in, though the state of his person rendered my actions somewhat unpleasant. I forced brandy into him, but for a long time I could not bring him round. He is an undersized rat of a man, and the shape of his cranium suggests deficiency. It took me 2 hours to rouse him, and as soon as I had done it, he had an epileptic fit and relapsed into a further coma. In the night I had a terrible dream. Something stood by my bed and whispered, "You wanted human material. We have given it to you." Of course, I cannot do it. I must be rid of the fellow, send him to the nearest town for an ambulance, and see the last of him. That is the suggestion of my charwoman, from whom I could not try to conceal him. Damned interfering woman. Ought to be locked up, not safe, not with him in his fits. As to these, he has had 2 more, the second more violent than the first. Obviously, as I pointed out, he is in no fit state to be moved. All in good time. I'd better get this settled, and then be rid of this woman, for she is going to be a nuisance. There was trouble enough over a few rabbits. I shall have to manage by myself. Of course I cannot do it. I've thought it all out very carefully. Even supposing the wretch had no one who was interested in him, I should be running an appalling risk. The police find everything out, and their only word for it would be murder. And yet, curse these tempting thoughts. I'm overtired. That's what it is. I must rest, with my visitor still here. Fool that I am. If I had not been so undecided today, he would have been out of it by now. But tomorrow he must go. June 18th. It is late, and I know that I am tired, but I cannot rest, and the brandy I have drunk burns like fire inside me. I have done it. My hands are reddened. Metaphorically, of course. I was far too careful for there to be any actual blood spilt. My God, am I mad that I can write so calmly about it? Yet the sweat is running down my temples, and my nerves are all to hell. Really, I had no intention of doing it. None at all. It was an accident, a pure accident in the struggle. After all, I had to defend myself, and the strength of these epileptics renders them highly dangerous. No jury could ever bring in a verdict. But that wasn't really why I did it, you know. I could have mastered him, if I tried, when he staggered from his couch. I could have given him a needle and quietened him, but I didn't, you see. I wanted him not alive, but dead. I wanted his rotten brain and his slimy, foul blood. Are these my hands that are writing these things? Yes, they must be. I must be careful. I must be careful. I'm saying that to myself over and over, very slowly. There is enough madness in this house without adding this brain of mine to the total. I've burnt my boats now. I can't go back. It's all done thanks to that great copper out there. That was sheer inspiration, even if she suspected the top's too heavy for her to lift off. That woman What am I going to tell her? Steady. No, I must keep calm. I shall tell her that he's vanished as he came. She'll believe that. She must. How extraordinary it is that most people commit their murders so clumsily. I suppose it is because they get flurried and haven't a knowledge of anatomy. How simple it was, after all. How clean. Just the steady pressure of 2 thumbs, one on each side of the windpipe, stopping the flow of blood to the brain through the carotid arteries. I could see his face now, if I wanted to. But of course I don't want to. There's no need for me to see it if I don't want to. It's only a question of willpower. Besides, he hasn't got a face now. That woman. Oh, but never mind her now. It'll be dawn in an hour. I haven't any time to waste, and besides, it spells the difference between success and failure if one starts with the material. Here, there is a complete page torn from the manuscript. It appears to describe certain preliminaries, if one may judge from the context, and indicates a time gap of about 3 hours at a guess. Formation. I have had to transfer it very carefully to a much larger vessel, and placed this on the floor of a small unfurnished upper room, which I shall keep locked. Fortunately, it is a stout door and will bar all her curiosity. She must go today. It isn't safe. I am far from certain what the result will be. The mixture may defeat its own ends. There is sufficient for other trials if this happens, or would serve as nutriment if the cell culture develops in its new form. I feel that I am going to do it. I'm at one with the alchemists of old, with their murky dens, toads, snakes, cat's blood. That wasn't such nonsense. There was a solid substratum of chemical truth overlaid with the hobgoblins and devils. Sometimes they got the right blend. How long to wait? June 18th. Or is it the 19th? I don't know. Turning night into day and throwing away my sleep, I am confused and terrified. No wonder. That infernal woman. She is suspicious. She won't accept my story. I took the initiative when she arrived this morning, though I was so tired that the effort was terrific. I knew I could feel perfectly safe, in that no proof or hint of what has happened remains to betray me. That part of the tramp that is chemically useless lies packed under some rubbish in the great copper, and there is no sign of my having opened it. She could never raise the top, it's far too heavy. The essential human elements I extracted scientifically, and I would challenge anyone to find out that it has been done, save by analysis of certain fluids and colloids in my makeshift laboratory. Even the work of extraction I masked by the use of powerful deodorants. What could there be to cause this damned creature to stare so strangely at me when I told her that the tramp had taken himself off in the night? She said something about, "Nice thing for a lonely woman to hear," and the usual babble about being murdered in her bed. Why must she start talking about murder? She nearly threw me into a panic by telling me she was going to notify the authorities. I had the greatest difficulty to stop her, and it only made her more suspicious. I'm afraid she will have to be extinguished. Oh, what have I written? What are these thoughts that possess my brain? Can I be contemplating a second murder? But the first was no murder. It was a scientific act, necessary for the progress of my experiments. If I had not acted as I did, what would have been the consequence? This idiot, this deranged nuisance, would have become a charge upon the public purse, expensively maintained at an institution. His useless life would have been pandered to, and petted, wasting money, thought, and skill. He was incurable. I'm a doctor, I ought to know. He was incurable. I say so. Damn it, I've performed a public service in in using him the way I have. I am a benefactor. But the police wouldn't see it like that. This woman, this fat, slobber-mouthed harridan, she's going to betray me. I shall have a crowd of officials, detectives, coming to the house. Your name, sir, occupation? You took the missing man in and then allowed him to escape with no notification. A degenerate, sir, and you maintain that he is not dangerous. I have here a search warrant. I must request you to stand aside. Jones, Brown, search this copper. Lift the cover. No, not that. I can't have that. The fools, idiots. They're going to interfere with scientific work of the greatest importance. She will have to be extinguished. I know of a rare drug. I have a little. There will be no trace, and she will pass away in her sleep tonight, after she has left me. I must make a pretext of keeping her here late, so that she will have no time when she leaves me. What is it they say? To blow the gaff. That's the way. If she is nervous at making her way home alone, I will myself offer her a courteous escort to her house. I will ingratiate myself with her during the day, gain her confidence. I wish there was some other way, but there isn't. After all, it will be perfectly safe and without trace, peaceful in her sleep. Heart failure. Oh, the curse of these distractions, when I want all my faculties for that little room upstairs. June 20th. It is the 20th now, for it is long after midnight, and I am almost light-headed with fatigue, not having slept at all last night. I must get to bed for a few hours, or I shall go to pieces. Well, she's gone by now, long gone. It was the easiest thing in the world. Callous to write like that. I suppose one's second has a hardening effect. In a cup of tea, so simple, and her pathetic trust and gratitude when I escorted her home. Enough of that. It's as bad as hysteria. Parts of this diary that I've glanced at are like the ravings of a madman. I must edit them when I have time and make them more as it's supposed to be, a scientific treatise. I am very careful with this writing. Every night it goes into its hiding place, where my young friend from the newspaper will look for it when I die. You never know. It would be a tragedy if I died without the world ever becoming aware of my work, even if it was incomplete. Another could go on, but they won't need to. I feel I am nearing the finish. I have just realised with a shock that it is over 20 hours since I last examined the specimen. Admittedly, by my calculations, it will be some days before any result is apparent, but I must have a look now before I turn in. In a few hours, that woman... No, she won't, though. I'd forgotten. She can't come. She mustn't. Oh, I'm writing nonsense. My brain is nearly crazed with fatigue. June 22nd. After a final inspection last night, at which no change was apparent, I was utterly unprepared for what I found this morning. I stood in the door for some seconds, scarcely able to believe my eyes. The mixture, as I wrote before, consisted of equal parts of human and animal ingredients, plus certain reagents whose composition has been previously set down in detail. When I left it last night, it was as it had been for some time, a dingy paste of the consistency of thick mud. But this morning, it had risen to an irregular globulous form, not unlike a vast puffball fungus or a mass of dough being cooked with an excess of leaven. The glass dish in which it lies has vertical sides 4 inches in height, and this morning the mass reared over an inch above the edge, whereas formerly it had occupied the dish to half its depth. 2 hours later, it had increased by a further 3 inches, and on my last visit a few minutes ago, A greyish-brown fungoid structure towered fully a foot out of the vessel. In appearance, I can only describe it as repulsive to the point of obscenity, while a faint, acrid smell, dry and irritating to the throat, filled the room. I find I have omitted to mention that the room is sealed, and that I maintain it with great exactitude at a temperature, pre-calculated, of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Interest and curiosity rapidly overcoming my first kindling of disgust, I examined it closely on the last occasion, and was very interested to observe a regular, if slight, pulsation of the top of the mass, causing it to quiver with a just perceptible movement. I restrained myself from any tangible examination, as this might well have upset its delicate progress, but a thermometer held an inch away from the surface rose rapidly to a reading of 110 degrees. In the last hour it has not grown in size by any measurable amount, and I am definitely of the opinion that the structure which has formed is a species of egg. In a few hours, judging from the speed of its recent progress, it should complete its incubation. I have placed in the room a large supply of the special nourishment. Here follows a heavily scored out passage. I am not free, it seems. It is extremely foolish of me to admit it, but I am putting it down on paper in order to clear my mind, which, under the stimulus of my work, was clearing, but now troubles me again. The moment I try to rest, the wet face of the epileptic rises before me, and that grinning fat gargoyle who has died so painlessly. Oh, she must have died, for she hasn't returned. Yet it is extraordinary that no one has been near me to say so. Why? They can't be waiting to pounce. Oh, I must overcome this stupid hysteria that sweeps over me. Why should anyone come? Who is there to come? Her cottage was a mile away, and there are no others near. Things can happen in the country, and not a soul be the wiser. There is no reason why they should think she was murdered. Oh, how my pen jibs at the word. Murdered. Murdered. I have written it twice, to prove to myself that I am under control. What a vile word it looks. A leering word. She had a weak heart, I could tell that from her laboured breathing. She was alone with her cottage and her garden, her cow and her chickens. She often spoke of them, and once or twice cooked a fowl for me. They must be starving in their runs, rushing about squawking and crowing. Perhaps they are eating each other. I ought to go and feed them. It's the least I can do. Go past that silent cottage, where her fat bulk lies still and rigid. The cow would be all right, for it could feed itself, lowing to be milked as an accompaniment to a chorus of clucking, starving fowls. Does no one ever call at her cottage? I can't leave and go. I have work to do. A fine, healthy puffball waiting to be delivered. I must have fallen asleep. From the look of it, I went on writing in my sleep. What woke me? I must really edit this script properly. What was that? A thud from upstairs. And another. I must put this away and go and see. Damn the dark, I shall have to light a candle. June 21st. Why didn't I get some sleep while I had the chance? I have nearly finished the brandy to keep going, and I must have my brain clear so that I can end this work. The room upstairs is barricaded, and it can't get out. Not yet, anyway, however fast it grows. When I came down, my first idea was to destroy this manuscript, to prevent any living soul, as far as in my power, from doing the frightful thing that I have committed. The frightful, horrible thing. But now that I know what I have done, what I have evoked, I realise that the best way is to leave this script after all. Let it be a warning. So for the last hour, I have been going through all I have written, destroying every reference, every formula. It's as much as my strength can do. I can't edit it, even if I wanted to. There must be no starting point for another researcher. And all the time I've been doing it, the thing upstairs has been beating and flopping at the barricaded door. When I have finished, I'm going upstairs to destroy it, the filthy, unnatural thing. Its spores are everywhere, thick on my desk, in the air, nauseating. I cannot write much more, or I shall exhaust myself before the final effort. In that, I dare not fail. I know what I can do. I shall do it at any price. I must wipe out this blasphemy that I have called into being. When I was roused from an uneasy sleep by the thud that came from above, I took a candle and went up. It was not until I was on the stairs that I faltered, at the thought that my experiment had reached some unthinkable conclusion. There was a dry and acrid odour drifting down the stairway, like I had smelt before in the room, but much stronger. Worse. The air was thick and set me coughing. Even the candle burned blue and spluttered. A slow-moving cloud of gas, as I thought, dark brown in colour, almost hid the door, and flowed sluggishly down the stairs. The landing was opaque with the thick fog of it, and it reminded me of the smell and colour of bromine. I reeled, gasped for breath, and seemed to have to fight through it to get to the door, while it rose in billowing waves around me. I was moving the candle across to my left hand to leave the right free for the door handle, when I saw my sleeve and my blood chilled. The gas was settling thickly on it in a fine, dry powder. I thought of the obscene thing that had swelled in my glass dish like a huge puffball. To break a puffball is to liberate a cloud of spores, fine, powdery seed particles. I stood there, icy and rigid, as it began to dawn on me. I listened, and something flopped and thudded inside the room. So it had been both fungus and egg. An awful terror seized me. What had I created? The flame danced and guttered in my hand, warning me that I had little time. I set my teeth, and my shaking hand rattled the knob of the door. I heard the thing inside flop away from the door, as if it drew away and then sat, waiting for me. I flung the door open. The brown dust, thick, lascivious, curled at me in a great gust, and in the waning light of the candle I had a vision of a whitish, slimy object, grotesque, malformed. It was about the size of a mongrel, and I swear it bared foam-flecked lips to snarl at me. It hesitated a second, and then began to hop across the floor in a series of broken jerks, as if in an epileptic fit. I leapt back, slamming the door upon that eldritch creature of my making. But I could not shut back the frightful stench that rose from it. I leant back against the woodwork, my breath a shriek in my throat, and retched with uncontrollable violence, while it clawed and bit to reach me. At the moment I cannot bring myself to write more. I want all the power I possess, can summon, to force myself again to ascend those stairs. But I must do it. I dare not even wait for daylight. It might get loose. Shall I ever walk down those stairs again? I do not know. I do not deserve to. There's blood on my hands, as thick as these blood-coloured spores that dance around me. My pen drops in a limp hand. I will put this manuscript where it will be found, and I must go upstairs.